It's another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. But are you subscribed? If not, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Spread the word about the Christian Reeve podcast and enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Now, before I get into today's proceedings, today's podcast, for those watching the podcast by video, you're probably noticing a massive lag. I do apologize for that. At the time of recording this, we just had massive internet issues on both sides for me and my guests. So and since we both live in the UK, I'm going to say that it's a UK problem. But yeah, for those listening to the Christian Reeve podcast, you won't probably notice a difference. And that's, at the heart of it, what really matters is the audio for a podcast. But all the same, I just want to apologize for any lags there are. Now, my guest today is a special guest because she's my first guest that I've had on the show who actually doesn't want to be, let's put it this way, like she deliberately keeps her name concealed for various different reasons. So we're going to work with the with the working name of Raffy, and we're not going to talk about what she does for a living. I believe you told me actually it was for legal reasons. Am I right in that? And welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Hey guys. Yeah, I'm very happy.
Okay. So it's for legal reasons. Okay. Now, I'm just going to quickly explain what you do. So away from that, you have kind of like a background, let's say, in sort of things like business insights, statistics, stuff like that. So I want to kind of just delve straight into that right off the bat. But before I do that, and I know I've done that about 5 times now, but this is a bit of a different podcast episode because Raffy is going to become a regular part of the podcast moving forward. Now, one of the things I've wanted to do on the Christian Reeve podcast for a long time is have more discussion-based episodes. Now, traditionally, I've done that, through single-only podcasts. I did a few with Dutch Deals where it was discussion-based, but my plan has always been to come in with a particular topic and, roll with that topic each and every time. That's always been the plan because I want to expand this podcast. I want to grow it, extend it beyond just the traditional interviews. Now, today is going to be a standard interview like every other interview, but it's more, the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to introduce Raffy to the podcast, to you guys, the viewers, the listeners. And that's why it's called Introducing Raffy. And I just wanted it to kind of be an introduction to you, who you are. Also, another thing is, as you can see, for those watching the Christian Reeve podcast, Raffy's a big giant piece of cake today. Yeah. And I understand you're going to go with different filters each time. So I'm quite interested to see where this will go moving forward. But anyway, like I said before, welcome Raffy. It's going to be a pleasure having these discussions with you moving forward. I'm very excited to do this because I know there's a lot of different topics that we can cover and that we can go into, both based on our own experiences and also things we're interested in. And also, hopefully, once we build this community enough, I want to accept requests from the audience as well. So if you guys do have a particular topic you like us to cover, please send us a comment either in the Discord server or to me on Instagram or wherever you follow me online, and we will look into that and potentially cover it on the show in a future episode. Now, enough of this plugging, enough of this setting up. Let's begin the interview. Now, first thing I'm going to ask you is, why are business insights so important in today's business world? And what are the key things that businesses can learn from business insights?
Wow, that is like a very heavyweight question.
Of course.
But and as you can see, I take myself very seriously. So maybe I will put my serious tone on and No, jokes aside, I think that each industry have their own definition of business insights, what they actually mean.
Okay.
And that varies in terms of trends globally happening, and also within that industry, what kind of like needs and what kind of new horizons they need to actually achieve. So it's a very generic term that could assume different kind of definitions, and at the same time, what it should actually mean is something that, well, an insight in itself is an action that a company could take in order to bring the growth of the company to another level.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember in the past that it was one of the interview questions. What is your definition of an insight? And I have to say, in the past, I did have a job that I passed it because I gave my own definition of it. And I think at the time, talking about years ago now, but I think at the time, I said it's the catch in kind of like sentence. So it's that sentence, it's that nugget of factual wisdom that actually brings to the conclusion and say, okay, let's implement this new action, let's do something about it because it would be profitable for the company, or that will be good for growth improvement. So yeah.
Before I quiz you a
Yeah.
bit more on that, I just want to ask, like, what's the stupidest like interview questions you've been asked, like in interview situations? Because I mean, already I already hate that question straight off the bat. How would you define business insight? Like, I get the point of the question, but it's, you've always got to play the game with interviews, and I hate that. And yeah, I was just wondering, like, what are some of the silliest you've received?
Well, I have to say, first of all, before answering that question, because I have to think about it, I think it's very good to always keep yourself doing interviews, because it's a practice. And then the more you practice, the better you will get at it. Mm-hmm. So even when you start to have like a demotivational moment at work, just put yourself out there. The stupidest, I think, is more about the classic, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? I think it's stupid, because if the company doesn't really give you the opportunity to grow, it defies the purpose of the question itself. But I think that I then experience another spectrum of stupidness, when a company is totally convinced that you know the inside out of their structure, and they ask you some specific questions that you come in from another company, you would never know. So that is a little bit short-sighted. That is a little bit myopic, really. And some recruiters should be more aware of it.
Okay.
That sounds so serious. Let's have a like.
Hey, this is what I do when I'm interviewing people. I mean, we can go in different directions, as you know, we've discussed a lot. But I think the whole purpose of this interview is I really want to kind of give people an understanding of your background, because I think that moving forward, naturally, we're going to do a lot of business related stuff just because of our backgrounds. I'm always talking about marketing, like I don't often think about that. It just seems to apply to a lot. And I have, I've studied it, I've worked in it, blah, blah, blah. Right. And you'll talk about what you know what I mean? But I think it helps to kind of, for the audience to understand just, your level of expertise, where it extends to, just what what you've been through, etc. And obviously we'll learn more and more about you as time goes on, but it's good to have a good frame of reference to start with.
Definitely.
Let's move it back to business insights though. One of the things I'm quite interested in knowing is, like, we've got all these different systems these days, and a lot of them seem to be kind of heading towards this idea of having like automatic systems that deliver you statistics, well, automatically, as opposed to having to manually kind of work with these systems. So what I mean by that is, like, instead of, having to, okay, if you take Google Analytics as a quick example, you still have to very much kind of interface with it, set things up, set up reports, but it will still deliver stuff to you automatically. So you can get 28 days, 60, 90 days, and it will come sort of automatically, right? So you can get reports on that. But there are systems like Power BI, for example, which I have a little bit of an understanding about. I think Tableau is another one, something similar.
Tableau.
Right. Could you talk to us a little bit about Tableau and Power BI and how that, sort of relates to business insights and, how they differ and what they actually deliver as opposed to standard, analytical sources?
All right. So I think, going back to your framing, I think you're right. So we started off with the definition of what it could be, a business insight. But the insight itself is like the research of the ultimate why. So it comes from a process of applying different methods, of scrutinizing, analyzing different data points, not only one data source. So it's like that kind of process that you join the dots, and each dot has required a certain level of investigation in the data. So somebody that does analysis, somebody that works within insights, it's kind of like a researcher and detective and literally an investigator that goes into the rabbit hole and digs out everything that needs to be digged out and then synthesizes to one nugget, the golden nugget, which ultimately is the business insight. Now, the automation itself is because now we are kind of like submerged by data, like everywhere, and all different systems, they spew out all sorts of data. And those data are made of metrics. So metrics are like the building blocks of that kind of like wall that you need to build yourself, because you have to pick the best bricks in order to have the fundamental for your methodology. So even though there is a level of automation, there's always the need of the analytical human eye and skills to synthesize everything, to answer that business question fully, 360 degrees really. That could serve not only one department, but it could be cross-departmental. And also ultimately it has to resonate to what the big cheeses, the big wigs, they need to know which, big decisions they have to take about it. So I've been doing insights overall, I would say 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And to be honest, overall, and across different industries, and there are different angles, there are different approaches, of course. And but I would say that in terms of tools, there are different tools. So Power BI and Tableau. Power BI itself is integrated with Microsoft Suite. So sometimes some industries, they prefer to use that because it's kind of like easier to interact with it. And also it depends on what type of database you have. If the database is also hosted within a package that is easy to connect with a Microsoft server. So in that case, some people, they use Power BI. In other cases, Tableau has been around for a long time. It's not new.
How long?
I think I've been using Tableau for the last at least 7
Oh,
years.
wow. Okay.
But the difference is that Tableau, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, it has really pushed on the marketing level of reaching out to big companies, being more prominent on LinkedIn and social platforms, and it basically established itself to be, or at least recognized as, the way to go, the portal, the visualization tool, the analysis tool. That it's kind of like easier or nicer to interact with. You can do analysis with both, with Power BI and Tableau. I've been using both in the past. At the moment, I'm using more Tableau, and actually, I would like to get like a certification of Tableau itself because it's
Mm.
very nice. In my view, it's in terms of digging into the data, it kind of like intuitive to some extent.
Right.
So, but nevertheless, I mean, there are so many other programs out there. It depends on the budget of the company. So if they have a big budget, if they can do it, if they have a good relationship with Tableau, everybody will use Tableau. I remember in the past I used similar data visualization and analysis and analytical tools. It all depends really. They are all kind of like based on the same fundamentals of building a query. A query is basically a question that you ask to the database, and then that question answers you with the right metrics that you need. Yeah, I'm answering quite well, am I?
Yeah, no, you're doing a great job, and thank you so
Thank you.
much. But it's just you're explaining something really serious and very well and very intellectually, but
Yeah, but I have
you're a cake.
I'm a piece of cake, you know.
I don't know why I'm so childish sometimes, but
I just love it, but that's why
Oh,
I
man.
picked it. Also, I'm sorry for
No,
the listeners. Hold on, we're sorry for the listeners that they're missing out. But
well, they'll have to come check out the YouTube version to see this
yes,
wonderful cake.
because I realized that I can serve being a piece of cake. So I can do lots of things, and I also have a candle,
You
and
do.
I whip my candle back and forth as well. It's amazing. I mean, to be honest, when you spend all day with data, you need to have fun, and
Oh,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah,
result of it.
um, you're like,
Next question.
okay, all right, yes, ma'am. So what are your thoughts on Google Analytics? Like, do you think considering there are like these more powerful sort of analytical tools like Tableau and Power BI, do you think there's any kind of point to Google Analytics for businesses, or do you think it's just kind of like a bit of nice kind of free software, but otherwise not really useful?
There is always like a purpose,
Right.
and there is a solution. So it depends really. If there is a company that the business model is
Mm-hmm.
based on being discovered and keywords and search,
Oh,
SEO
yeah.
optimization is important.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, they will rely more on Google Analytics. Myself, I kind of like tapped into it in the past, but
Mm-hmm.
at the moment, in the last, I would say 4 years, I've not been reliant on it. So I don't think that my usage of it has been that extensive to say, oh yeah, there's no point of it. There is always a
Yeah,
point. If there is a solution, there's a point.
I guess I should kind of reiterate further explain what I meant there. So like obviously there is a point, but like when you look at these more complex systems that do exist, and because I've used Google Analytics and then I've seen what Tableau is like by comparison, and it kind of feels like Google Analytics is your option. Like, let's say you don't have a particularly big marketing budget or something, and you need a free tool, then it's useful and you can do a fair amount of stuff with it. But your point just then that you made, I think, is very interesting, where you said that like Google Analytics is probably more intended for those companies that are looking to really get seen in like Google SERPs, search engine results pages, and make use of SEO keywords and stuff like that. Like that's very interesting, because that would kind of imply that if you're a business that really, like, let's say you're B2C as opposed to a B2B, so business to consumer versus business to business. If you're business to business, then you're building essentially kind of like word of mouth, really. You're kind of making partnerships with companies, and all of your business. I mean, you might get sort of direct business from your website, but more often than not, you're getting referred by other companies, by other people. You're making direct sales calls to companies, etc. Whereas if you're looking to kind of appear in the Google SERPs, then chances are you're either selling a product or a service that's intended for a consumer directly. Obviously, a B2B situation is still selling a customer, but it's different because if you're like a retailer or a service provider of some description, then it's going to be very important for you to appear high in those Google search results, because you're going to have a lot of competition and such, and
it all
so
depends what keywords you actually bump it up and pay. So let's say that, to be honest, search is important on any kind of consumer journey.
Right.
Yeah. So, like, for example, let's apply that to your podcast. In order to expand and grow the community, searchability is extremely important.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe one day we're gonna look into the Google Analytics. Why not? And based on previous experiences, like for example, let's say there is a product that is about to be launched and is linked to seasonality. So let's say, like for example, I think that tomorrow is Mother's Day, right? In the UK. So people will, and I'm just saying an hypothetical scenario, people will search for companies like moonpig.com or like cards company, and in order to send this card like as quickly as possible. It's locked down, or for example they forget, and now everything can be purchased online anyway. So there are some trends in terms of keywords that become more popular, and observing that is extremely important for the launch of products. And Google Analytics can also give you a breakdown of what other terms have been searched as well, and from where. That is very interesting from my perspective. Like globally, you will have different terminologies, and therefore, if you want to be discovered in more than one country, it's important to use the right keywords. Now, I always collaborated with departments that they specialized in SEO, and usually a department has its own strategy that feeds within the overarching marketing strategy. So yeah, it's a definitely important push for the discover, explore stage of the consumer journey. And if it's good enough, people will land on the right page, and therefore they could consider the purchase. And then they close the loop by purchasing it. And that, the journey continues after that.
Yeah, one of the things I learned when I sort of learned all about SEO and how you do it, like logically, and how you approach it. Like I actually worked under a guy who was really good and knew exactly what he was doing, and I learned a lot in a very short space of time. So thanks for that if you ever are listening to this. The first thing I learned off that guy was that like it's absolutely pointless to try and rank for like already highly established keywords. So for example, we were working in a financial trading company, right? And the first thing he said to me is like, as an SEO guy, I would never waste my money trying to rank, for example, for the term Forex, because that already has a ton of money pumped into it. And he said it is feasible that if you put enough money into it, you could appear on that top front page of Google. But like you'd have to spend a sort of an astronomical amount of money, and it just wouldn't be worth it. And sort of what he sort of said is their strategy, and what we then continued to do for the next year was rank for what we call long tail keywords. So like that can be a couple of words together, or maybe even like a whole sentence, like those listicle style articles, for instance, like top 10 things to know about financial trading or something like that. That would count. And I think the thing that I realized right off the bat is if you're trying to rank for anything, any kind of business product, then you need to make it as niche as possible, but still related to you. So like, for example, let's say I was going to do SEO keyword research for this podcast, and I was going to then sort of create content for that, or try and bump us up in the search results. Then I would look at like, for example, more specific. So like Manchester interview podcast, I would try and rank for that, for example, or, it's something where like the competition, the whole point of it is the competition is much less sort of, what's a good way of putting this? There's less competition for the keyword. So, and this is the thing, like if there's less competition and you make it as specific as possible, you don't always necessarily have to put a massive budget into it. Like, for example, with my website, okay, it's very specific, but I was able to get my website on the front page of Google. I think it's like the second search result or something like that. And it always has, but it goes up and down constantly, but it's always on the front page. And I did that with zero money. I just made sure all of my keywords were top notch. I've always kept updating the website. You know, I own my domain, all of these different things. And there's also options that I've done like SEO stuff behind the scenes as well that you do with websites. And point is that it's like it is possible to do that. I think it just comes down to how you do your SEO keyword research and how specific you make it.
That's true. It will be interesting to see how many, because your name Christian, some people think that you are Christian, like as a believer.
Oh, do you know what? Sorry, I just want to say to you real quick, actually, on that note, I am actually getting some interesting advertising based on that. So like I get like emails sometimes that are like Christian related, or sometimes I've advertisements in like Google and stuff for Christian related stuff, like worshipy stuff. And it's interesting. It really is. So there is something to that, but at the same time, the top things that come up when you search my name are, well, me, Christopher Reeve, the actor who played Superman, and also, fun fact, there's actually an actor called Christian Reeve who his biggest claim to fame was being an extra with a couple of lines in the movie You Don't Mess with the Zohan, if you remember that movie. Okay. He was in that, apparently. He was also apparently in Jarhead, which is some war movie that I think Jake Gyllenhaal was in. But anyway, yeah, it took me probably a better part of 6 months to get on the front page, but it wasn't too difficult to do it. I think you just have to kind of know what you're doing with SEO. Like once you know what you're doing with SEO, it's actually very simple. Like I generally use the approach of content creation as the style. So like, set yourself up a blog, start publishing articles, target for those more complex keywords via the articles, and then continuously just look for the highest ranking or highest searched, trending keywords, and then write content around that. And also, I'll give you guys some advice for any marketeers wanting to know. It's not a big secret, but basically every company does this. If you're trying to rank in the Google SERPs, what you do is you look at the first 5 entries for that that topic, and you basically take content from all of those places and you rewrite it in your own words and try to add to it if you possibly can. But the idea is everyone. Best practice? Everyone does it. I swear to God, every company does this. Everyone. This is the ultimate irony, because when I was at university, they would go on and on and on about you must never plagiarize, and they made it seem like it was illegal, right? But then I started working for various different companies around the world, and they all tell you to do the same thing. They don't come out and say it. They never come out and say, this is what we're doing. You just quickly realize that that's what you got to do. And to be fair, there are some people who literally plagiarize, which I don't condone. Don't copy other people's work. You'll quickly get found out. Google will punish you. They'll actively push you down in the search results if you just copy content or if you write it badly. Like Google's actually, it's machine learning. So it very quickly picks these things up and can kind of push you down and punish you as a result. They can also stop you from doing things like keyword stuffing. That's why you need to write good, coherent articles in order to get to the very top. But the best practice generally that I found is to just kind of look at what the other companies are doing and essentially create like your own thing based on what they're doing, and make sure you have everything in there. And then ideally to kind of top it off, you want to either add a different angle that some, that the rest of them haven't done, or you do like an article or a web page that has like extra content that the others are missing or something. But one of the key things I just want to add as a final kind of, string to the bow is try to look at all of the questions that people aren't asked on Google. So sometimes when you search for a particular thing, it will give you, those queries that drop down. It will say like what people have searched for that are similar. Try to answer those questions in your article as well, and that will help big time with pushing you up in the SERPs.
So I think this is very specific to content.
Well, I mean, yeah,
right?
Content creation with SEO is just one strategy. Like you can use SEO and other, I mean, there's we could do an entire podcast on SEO, to be honest, on different things you could do. But yeah, you're right. It's one particular strategy, I suppose.
I mean, to be honest, that sounds to me as surfing the wave that somebody else has already generated. So it could work in the short term, but it's not sustainable over time, because from one side, the SEO strategy could seem intuitive, but if you really want to be the forerunner of be there for a special occasion or for in connection with something that comes in mind with people. So you need to be like innovative about it. I remember a company where it was a case study that basically this company, FMCG company, so fast moving consumer goods, in the UK, I'm talking about years ago, in the UK, we had an exceptionally cold and rainy summer, even though that could sound as the basic, really. But it was in the middle, I think, of June, July. And it was very strange at the time. So we're talking about, I think, 6-7 years ago. Okay. And that company reacted very quickly. And they were able to position themselves there.
Yeah.
And selling tissue paper and being like exploding really digitally and be very accessible to everybody that were really in need of that. So that's clever. Of course, I think it depends on the circumstances. If, for example, the business need is to kind of like steal the share of your competitors or trying to have a different angle from your competitor, that is a different perspective, and I understand it. But sometimes when you really need to be the forerunner or you really want to leave the mark, you need to be innovative about it and be able to foresee the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, what you're essentially talking about is jumping on trends, which is not dissimilar to what I was talking about with regards to like keyword research and looking at what's trending. But at the same time, there's different ways you can go about that. And like I said, content management is one way. And one thing I'll add to that with regards to what you were saying is that you mentioned like, oh, you don't think it's sustainable. You're right. If you just upload stuff like content and then you don't do anything with it moving forward, then you will lose your ranking. So like one thing that companies often do, especially when they make like listicle style articles, is they'll update them every year and have like, okay, let's say like it's a business guide for entrepreneurs 2021, I don't know, for example. That guide needs to get updated every single year to reflect what's changed and new approaches, new information, whatever. Potentially have content taken, deleted out of it that's no longer relevant or is too specific to a particular year. Point is, you need to constantly develop the content on your website to reflect that. But yeah, like you said before, it's just one particular style. Like for me, I particularly favor content management as a strategy because it's just probably the quickest way, and it's a free way to potentially push you up in the SERPs. And if you've got like a particularly short small budget and you've not got many options, then it's a good place to start. But obviously, like you said, I mean, it's, if you've got more money to work with, then it's all about positioning and reactiveness. Like these days, the winners are.
Yeah,
Well, I
sorry.
was going to say, yeah, the winners are the reactive ones, like you said, you know, those who see a trend, you know, as it's about to happen or happening, and they jump on it, you know. So we've seen many examples of this over the years. For example, companies, you know, doing like Super Bowl adverts, for example, that, you know, grab people's attention, and it will be something related to the game or the time or whatever the case may be, and it's effective.
Sorry that I interrupted there, but is it really reactiveness? Actually, I think it's being proactive, because reactiveness is when you see the wave coming that, you know, has already worked with big companies, and you kind of like copy and do the same. But if you're proactive, in that case, in that example that I brought before, there were people that they were like FMCG, so they could very easily have copied what their competitors were doing, but instead they look outside their category and they looked at the, you know, material, you know, the weather trends in that market, and they did something about it. So that's the cleverness. So it's like, yes, having a micro but also macro view of other industries that will impact yours, and then do something about it, because that is, you know, creating the wave itself, not just like jumping on it and trying to surf it. For the Super Bowl, I mean, that's something else. I mean, the Super Bowl, it is annual event, and you know, the media spend behind it is extremely big, even for a few seconds.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I do understand that, you know, your experiences in content creation within marketing, but also marketing takes into consideration the media implementation as well, and that's the paid media, but also leverages the owned content, and that's the earned kind of word of mouth that comes from it. Once you kind of like reach out to the consumers, and then you brought them through that consumer journey.
Yeah,
So
I mean, content management is only just one style, though. That's what I'm trying to say. It's one strategy, and I have worked with other types of marketing as well. It's not just content management. You know, I've worked with companies that have their marketing and sales together, so I've done more sales-based stuff. You know, I've done basic calling, face-to-face stuff, like all sorts. You know what I mean? Like I know the value of different methods and strategies and stuff. I'm just saying that that's one particular example that many companies can opt for. Paid media, like you say, it's a completely different ball game. Like you look at the Super Bowl, companies are spending millions for ad spend for like probably 10, 15 seconds. But the companies that make it work best are the ones that try to be more creative with their approach. So they don't just put a standard advert there. They put something that people are going to remember and people are going to talk about. And that is what will drive more attention towards them and more sales potentially. Do you know what I mean? Because it gets stuck in people's heads. You know, it's the same reason like Coca-Cola spends so much money on advertising every single year. And they probably don't need to, but they do so because, you know, it gets in people's heads. You do it enough, it's almost subliminal. Do you know what I mean? When you you see it enough, it gets stuck in your head, and then maybe later on when you want to go grab a drink, oh, I'll grab a Coke, and then it's like, oh damn, like, do I even control my own mind? Like, but it's, you know,
they have a legacy to live up to. So
true.
And they also, to some extent, they might have been the creator of brand advertisement.
Right.
Because the branding of Coca-Cola is like its legacy, is legend. The way that the word has been created and crafted, the whole kind of like feeling behind it as well. When you actually drink it, is connected to a feeling, is connected to a moment in which you want to refresh yourself.
And that moment is sickness.
I don't like Coke. I don't like it. I don't drink it. I don't like it. But you know, that's
so
the
bad.
whole kind of like messaging behind it.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, talk us, because you've got a background in market research. So talk us through the process of conducting market research.
Well, God. Conducting. Oh, okay. Well, I think, as you said before, if I want to flesh it all out, that will take us, it would be a topic of our entire podcast itself. But market research can be of two, um, it can be qualitative and quantitative. Um, it can take different shapes, and in the last years, um, has evolved over time. So the focus groups that in the past took like a little more legwork to put together, to sampling the right people that is your target audience. Nowadays, I've seen the development of some companies that can do the same kind of focus group testing, but also capturing their learnings digitally. So that makes things much quicker. And when leading a market research, the most important thing is to make sure that the expectations are very clear, because the qualitative is the context really. So you cannot really pinpoint what you expect. Sometimes qualitative research is used to test hypotheses, to test a messaging, and is purely the opinion of people. And the sample, it often is quite small. So it could be like 16 people in a market, or it could be 32 people. But of course, compared to quantitative testing that is done by a survey. So somebody will receive like a survey of 10, 15 minutes maximum with some questions, and that could go to a wider sample. By sample, we mean a number of people. So of course, the quant and quals, they serve different purposes. And it's, at the moment, I just, in a nutshell, that's what they look like. There are different methods, and that's why research methodology and research theory is important, and ethics in how to position the question, and how to and at which stage the question comes across during the interview. That is also very important, because you can prime your audience, you can prime your kind of receiver of the question, and you don't want to bias the output of their answer. So that is something that there's a whole theory and best practices behind it. And I found that fascinating, to be honest. So there are big companies that they're leading things like that, like Kantar, Millwall Brown, just from the top of my head. And they're also like a smaller boutique, or more ad hoc like agencies. They know what to do. And in my opinion, leading market research, it depends a lot on the charisma and the knowledge of the person on how to be ethical about the questioning, and also how to get the best answer out of people. So that's a skill that is developed over time.
For sure, for sure. This will be a really obvious question, but I am kind of interested in your take on it. Like, when you look at business ethics these days, would you say that, companies are actually more ethical these days? Or do you think it's just like, a PR thing and they're all just trying to improve their CSR and it's just about public relations?
Well, what do you mean by business ethics? Because before I was referring to ethics, to the methodology of constructing and structuring questions.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So business ethics, it's like related to the business values and the business ideals, what the company advocates. So that's slightly different. And to be honest, nowadays there are trends going on. So inclusiveness, representation of women, those are trends in my view, to be honest. Values are great to see being advertised by the companies. Sometimes I see a lot of that on LinkedIn, and across, but is it really cascaded down to the day to day? That's another question.
Oh, LinkedIn is just, it's a treasure trove of cringe and nonsense. And I'm sorry, I call BS on that. I think it's all fake. Like I see
It's
so
so
much of it.
entertaining,
Oh,
very funny.
it's so cringe, man. There's the amount of people that are like, they'll just make a post and they talk about things like work family and like, oh, I love my work family, I heard an amazing thing the other day. This will make you laugh. So I was watching a Joshua Fluke video, and if you guys don't know who he is, go check him out. He does excellent content. But he came across this thing where on LinkedIn, where people who'd left companies were referring to themselves as employee alumni. So like, yeah, let's say someone gets fired or they get let go, and they'll be like, oh yeah, it was a pleasure working for this company for 3 years, and I'm sorry to have been let go in the layoffs, blah blah blah, but now I'm an employee alumni and thank you so much, and blah blah blah. It's like they just fired you, and now you've got no livelihood, and what are you going to do? Like, why are you thanking them? Like, they're not your family. Like, that whole family thing is just one whole company line to get people to feel that they're part of something. But the reality is very different. Like, a business is a business. If they're making money and you're making them money, great, everyone's happy. But if they're making losses, I mean, you're out the door. That's just how it is. There is no family. And it's amazing. I've been in this situation so many times over the years where, it all seems like peaches and cream at the beginning, and then give it 6 months when things start getting hard and suddenly people's attitudes change and you start really seeing how things are. It's a bit like a relationship. You don't really know someone until about 6 months has passed, or, you really
Yeah,
start living with them or something.
but I guess once you know what the deal is. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
expect that the honeymoon period will always last like that long.
Hmm.
So I on that point though, um, there is a facade that people has to keep it up on LinkedIn and on at work, because that post for that person,
Mm.
it was meaning basically, I'm not I'm not be, um I'm not destroying this bridge. And if in the future something else is going to happen, I'm going to get back.
Yeah, but
Because
if you get fired, there is no bridge. If you get let go, right? That there is no. If you, I mean, if you left of your own volition, like you resigned, and it wasn't forced, then okay, I could agree with your point. Fair enough. Like, yeah, maybe you don't want to burn your bridge. And to be fair, I will say, I never like openly, publicly disparage companies. You'll never hear me like, if people look me up, they can put two and two together. But like, I will never come out and disparage a company, because for two reasons. One, I think companies do good and bad. I can think of maybe like one company I worked for one time that didn't do anything for me, but the rest, I'd say like 90% of them, it was like good and bad. So you always get something out of the experience. And then secondly, I just don't think it's professional to disparage in general. Like, it doesn't make
no,
you look good. It doesn't make anyone else look good. But at the same time, you would never catch me going like, oh yes, it's been quite the journey, 5 years at this company, and or however long. And, I'm going to miss my work family. Like, that's such nonsense. Work is work. Those people at work are not your friends. Like, maybe you make some friends at work. If you do, like, fair play to you. Like, that's cool. But like, generally speaking, like, those people are not going to stick their neck out for you. Like, they're,
no.
it's like,
But to be honest,
you know what I mean? It's like, if things go wrong, it's like every man for himself kind of mentality. It's like, everyone's there to provide a living for themselves, from their families. So that's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about, oh, my work family. Like, what? That's just PR nonsense. Sorry, not PR, HR nonsense. It's just,
well, to be honest, I can see both angles. I agree. I mean, that's the truth. But, people, let's, I consider things from also a a person that has been doing the same job for like 16 years or so, maybe his or her role has been made redundant,
Hmm.
and whilst is looking or she's looking for something else,
Mm.
that post is shared. So if an opportunity arises to go back, she could go back. I
Mm.
mean, people sometimes they don't like to move around and they want to stick to what they know best.
Mm.
uh, you know, the appearances of being a family. To be honest, I've been in short projects. I was when I was on contract,
Hmm.
and I did come across some companies that they were like very close knit. Um, Not at the family level. They were not kind of like consider themselves as family,
Hmm.
but they were very cool. So I seen the worst and the best across, many different companies. And I don't judge them in a way that, that's good for them. Personally, I have a work relationship with my colleagues that are my colleagues. I can be friendly with my colleagues because that's my nature, but I would never kind of like open up and say things that I would say to my friends. So that's unfortunately, that's the way I am. Nevertheless, I'm very chatty, yeah, that comes natural. But being made redundant, I've never been in my life, but I know situations that it can be very tough, man. So you invested so many years, like literally sometimes a decade and plus, and then out of a sudden your world comes upside down. And if, for example, you get a temporary solution,
Mm.
that's great. You also have a package that's good, that keeps you going until you find something else. Hey, but if, for example, you are in a situation that is temporary and your old company has a similar position that you were doing before, you would be the first to jump back in. Even if, for example, some of the colleagues were not your favorite, you will say, yes, I want to go back to that company because I invested so much time and energy of my life into it. I want something back and I want to continue growing there. So there are people that they think like that. you know um, to me, the most funny thing that I've seen recently on LinkedIn was, um, and bless them, I'm not, I just find it like very interesting. So these youngsters that they're so cute, and they're saying, oh, I just accepted um, an internship in this company, and they put like a big picture of the logo of the company,
Yeah.
and they're so cute, and I'm like, oh,
Ugh.
you don't know what is up to you, like what you're gonna go through. And I hope that they, of course, all of them, they're gonna have a fantastic experience. And it's just nice and cute to see the enthusiasm. um
Yeah, that dies. give
that
it, give
that
it,
will
give it,
go.
give it 6 months, and then you'll realize why people don't want to work there.
You know what? I have been for many years. I've been like a union rep in many different companies,
Mm.
and sometimes interns are being treated very bad.
Right.
Um, I have never interned in. That's something I never experienced. But the thing that somebody is there to do the wet work,
Mm.
basically, and on top of that, they're not being treated as an employee.
Yeah.
It's so bad. And he's a young person that is trying to get into the world of work. So there's so much pressure on these youngsters, and it's not fair on them at all. I've seen some instances that, it's just very, very annoying, especially when it's, for example, a nice, bright person, and the and for example, the director or the line manager is somebody that has been there for centuries and always stuck into the old ways, and kind of like has a resentment towards like a younger person
Yeah.
that knows things more than he or she does. That's the most
That's stupid.
annoying thing, and um, just very awkward to see around, really. And I've
Yo,
seen it a lot.
I've got a wild story for you. So,
Wild.
I did an internship. Let me see. It was towards the end of my first year of university. So like What are we talking? Like, it would have been like, yeah, I think it was either the towards the end of the first year or like in the middle of the second year, something like that. But I was so stoked. It was like an internship at the headquarters of this company. You know, I had gotten it through a family friend's like significant other, who would be the person I was working with. I got to be very careful how I word this, by the way, because I think I've spoken about this once publicly, and I'm not going to give names, but if they ever listen to this, they'll know, and they should be ashamed in themselves. So basically, I did a month internship at this place. It was the headquarters of this company. Like I said, the significant other was I'm going to call it SO. Let's call her SO. So the SO. Yeah, you know, she showed me around this place. I was really stoked. I was excited to kind of my first experience in marketing, because bear in mind, at this point, I've just started studying marketing. I know nothing about marketing. So this is like my first experience, like, oh, exciting. I'm going to be in a marketing office. I'm going to get to do all sorts of cool stuff. Here's the reality. Straight off the bat, all I'm doing is I'm sat down with a computer and I'm basically doing data entry. Now, don't get me wrong, I expected to do some menial tasks because, you know, that's just work. That's just how things work. Now, I was getting paid, to be fair. I think I was. Did I get paid? Yes. Paid. Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. Yeah, I did. It wasn't a lot, but it was, you know, it was something symbolic. Let's call it that. So I was doing data entry, and that was like, I was there for a month, and that was mostly what I was doing. So I was very disappointed by that. Now I'll get to like the whole point of this story first, but I want to kind of just lay out what the internship looked like for a month, right? So it was lots of data entry. A couple of times I got to sit in on this like marketing meeting, which was between basically the head of this company and then who I was working under, the head of the marketing wing of this company, and then this person who represented a company that they just acquired, right? Who was also a creative marketing person. So I would get to sit in on those meetings, and they would even let me add input or write notes and stuff. So that was actually really cool, but that only happened like twice. So it's like two instances for like half an hour out of 40 days of this internship, right? And I'm continuing. So that was mostly what was going to happen. The whole point was that I was supposed to be doing this data entry stuff and working with these, I don't know what you would call them. It was basically stuff that was going to be used for an upcoming show that they had. So like they would have like display stuff in their showroom, and they would show it to like investors, buyers, and then the buyers would buy that stuff, right? And unfortunately, I couldn't attend the actual event because I was having to go back to uni at that time. So I would missed out on that, and that would have been, I suppose, the culmination of everything. But yeah, that was basically the whole kind of internship in a nutshell. But that's not actually why I wanted to tell this story. I just wanted to illustrate that like the internship taught me zero about marketing, and it was like very, very disappointing in terms of what the day-to-day was. Now, here's where the story's messed up. So before I even start this internship, right, I come back because I've been on holiday with my then girlfriend at the time in Europe. And I came back, and literally I'm due to start this internship in a couple of days when I get this phone call. And my dad tells me that basically my great grandmother has died, right? Oh. And I'm like, well, shit. So apologies for swearing, but I was upset. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I wasn't like excessively close to my great grandma, but you know, I saw her a lot when I was a kid. Yeah. You know, and you know, she's family, terrible. And yeah, you know, it's never cool when someone dies. And my dad wanted me to sorry?
How old were you when that happened?
21, 22, something like that. But anyway, well, I mean, look, she was a great grandma. Do you know what I mean? She was old, she had Alzheimer's. Like, it wasn't like I wasn't distraught, but I was like, you know, I was obviously like, oh, that sucks. And here's the thing, like, I knew that basically my dad called me, and the reason he called me was like, hey, you know, can you come with me? Basically, is what he was asking. And I was like, yeah, of course. And, you know, me and him made a sort of like a road trip out of it. And, you know, we made the best of a bad situation, and we were there for the family and all of that stuff. But anyway, naturally, I was not able to start this internship straight away because of this. And I'll be honest, like, it kind of threw me everywhere. So my priority was no longer this internship. My priority was family. Someone's died. Do you know what I mean? And I forgot about this internship. I'll be honest, because I was dealing with this, like, you know what I mean? I was dealing with stuff, right? And then yeah, well, look, whenever someone goes through like a bereavement situation, it throws everything up in the air, and you as a company need to be compassionate and understanding towards that.
Well, it depends.
Well, no, in a bereavement situation, no.
No, it depends, because in that case, you were not an employee yet. So
well,
you didn't start it yet.
Well, that's irrespective. It doesn't matter. Like, someone's died. If okay, from my perspective, if you're already giving me grief when someone's died, why the hell would I want to work for your company if that's how you're going to act?
So that's what happened. Because what I mean is...
Well, I'm not finished yet, but like, let me explain. So basically, yeah, I find out that this happens. I call the business and say, you know, oh, hey, I'm sorry, you know, I'm not going to be able to start straight away. This has happened. And instead of, oh, condolences, etc., I receive, oh, this is very unprofessional. You know, you haven't started this yet. And I'm like, are you serious right now? And then I just go, okay. And I literally just go, okay. Like, because I was, you know, I'm just like, I can't deal with this right now. Like, I'm like, someone's just died. Like, and that's the response straight away. So I already know the type of person I'm dealing with. Okay. So I go to the funeral, go do all this stuff, come back. And so obviously I start the internship like a day later or something like that. Right.
A
day later, maybe 2 days at best, but whatever. Right. But not it wasn't like, you know, I missed loads of time or something. Like, it was, and plus I was an intern, so it's not like I'm a full-time member of staff, so it's not going to direct, like, impact them in some way, right? Soon as I start, I have a meeting with this person, right? They sit me down, and for an hour they just go in on me about how unprofessional it was that I started late, and how, you know, it's unacceptable. And, oh, Christian, you know, if you're ever going to work, it was really patronizing and ridiculous. It was like, if you're ever going to work for a company professionally, you have to understand that, you know, there are procedures and ways that we do things. And, you know, this is completely unacceptable and completely unprofessional. And then I said, like, I was stunned. I was sitting there speechless. And I was like, are you serious right now? I was like, look, I've worked for companies before. I know what professionalism is, right? But someone in my family's just died, right? And you're not showing any compassion as a company and as a person. Like, they're a representative of the company. Obviously, they don't represent the company as a whole, but in that instance, they do. And that's my first kind of interaction with anyone from that company. And straight off, we're on a bad foot. And basically, the whole point was that person was trying to make me feel bad and put me in line and sort of be like, oh, you know, straight away kind of set the tone for how things are going to be. And I was like, I don't accept that. Like, I don't accept that, because if I was working, you know, if I owned a company, if I was a higher ranking professional, then I would not treat someone like that in a bereavement situation. And I've worked in other companies where someone's had a bereavement, and you know what happens? You give that person some space, right? You give them the time they need. And then when they come back, you just, do you know what I mean? You resume but the thing is, you resume work. You don't give them grief and be like, oh, it was unprofessional. You know, you weren't here and this happened, that happened. Look, you work as a business, you work as a team to get around it. Like, bereavements happen. It's a part of life, right? And as an employee, the best thing you can do is try to give them as much notice and time and stuff like that. And that was what this person was saying. But like, at the same time, like, this was sudden news. This wasn't like I'd found out a month before. It's like I came back, my intention was to start the internship, and then I received this news and I had to suddenly go elsewhere. So it was like not planned. And yeah, that was my first experience of marketing. So then I had to do an internship for a month afterwards. And sorry, I should add something as well. So this person, berated me for like an hour about that. And then right at the end, just went, "Oh, and Christian, sorry about your gran." And then I was just like, okay.
Well,
I closed the door.
Well. And in that case, you should have like raised a complaint with HR, to be honest, I think.
Do you know what? Well, the thing is, like, they were
leave.
responsible. They were responsible for me having the internship, and I guess in my sort of young mind, I was like, well, let's just see how this goes. I mean, that's just a person. And to be fair, everyone else that worked there was lovely. Like, they were all really nice. It was just her. Like, she was a difficult person to work with. My family told me the sort of person that this person was like before I'd even worked with her. So I was already bracing myself. But the bigger part to all this, and what I really want to focus on, because this is the reason that I brought this up, right?
Yeah.
Other than the fact that it's just lol, like, it's a funny story, it's also the fact that, like, companies need to act professionally at all times. And, you know, when you have these internship experiences, like, there's this massive pressure put on you to perform, to impress and stuff. But I think the company needs to impress you as well. They need to go all out and show you, well,
No, they don't.
you know, yeah, they do. Yes, they do.
No, not necessarily. Because
Yes, no, yes, they do. Yes, they do. They need to make an effort. They can't just, you know, expect you to just work your ass off and not give you anything back, not make a good impression. That's more what I'm getting at. They need to make a good impression. If they just treat you like crap the whole time and then go, oh, well, you know, it's up to you to make the most of it. I disagree with that. I don't think that's very professional. And like I said before,
it's not
right,
professional, but at the same time, Chris, you know, if you go in and doing an internship for a big company, they, in their perspective, and it's a wrong perspective, but in their perspective, they say, hey, you should be grateful to be here to begin with.
Yeah, I disagree with that right away, right off the bat.
And unfortunately, that is such an old mindset that is very detrimental for, you know, the new professionals, for the new guys, for the youngsters. So on the other end, because I'm an optimist and I always try to see the silver lining in any situation, you know, once you've been through the rings of, you know, the gruesome rings of fire, and you've been hopping through all the hoops, then you can say, oh my God, that was an extremely horrendous experience. But now, you know, if they will try to treat me like that, I will not let them. So it's in their way because they've been taught that way, because they've been treated that way. So that's the only way that they know how to manage other people. And that's very bad. So usually people that they do that is because they don't know any better. And they are not leaders, they are bosses. And, you know, that's unfortunately, that's how they've been growing up professionally. Do I agree with that? No, not at all, because it's so, it's unprofessional. But sometimes in some companies, I've seen it, being arrogant, being abrasive, or being obnoxious is seen as being professional, which is a very much like
what?
Yeah, I mean, it's a total kind of like misconception, but that's what they think it is. It's not. It should be ethical about it, be cool about it, be, you know, have that kind of mannerism that people look up to you rather than being scared of you. So, scared, or like, to be honest, I think that the youngsters, they have pity for these people rather than be scared. Because I recently had an exceptional intern that, you know, she was amazing. And when the internship finished, you know, we're still friends. She was not directly like working in my department, but it's we were like collaborating on a few things. She was very sharp, and she got like a fantastic job after the internship, not in my company but somewhere else. you know Amazing, because there are bright people out there. Why
Yeah.
do we have to dim their lights just because your light is already dimmed? That's not right.
And here's the reality as well. Like, if you take that scenario that I laid out, like, and you picked up on this as well, which is really
Mm.
spot on. Like, that older mentality from, like, that boomer generation or whatever, like, of, oh well, uh you know if you don't act our way, then you miss out on an opportunity. You're gonna miss out. It's you got to impress us, blah blah blah. Well, the reality is there's so many options now for employees. Startups, small to medium sized businesses, large corporations. You can set up your own thing. Like, there are so many options these days. So I don't buy into that. I think that professionalism and making sure that interns have a good kind of time
Yeah.
and they enjoy it and they get the most out of it is more important than ever. Like, because look, reputation is more important than it's ever been. Like, people talk, and if you give your interns bad experiences, they're going to talk about that. Like, here's me all these years later talking about, okay, yeah, I'm not mentioning the company, but like I said, my information is public. You can find it online. If you want to put two and two together, you can. But point is that, like, people talk about these things. People don't forget, and it always looks bad on you. And there's been companies that I've avoided because of what I've heard about them. And when I investigate them, look at them, for instance, on like websites like Glassdoor or Trustpilot, and you get a really kind of better understanding of people's experiences, good and bad, through those websites. And I really implore people, especially interns, if you're looking for opportunities, make sure you do your research about the companies and know what you're getting into. I know I'm kind of putting a bit of a negative slant here. There are plenty of companies that give fantastic internship schemes, but just don't forget that, like, major companies aren't your only option. You can go for startups, you can go for smaller enterprises, and you'll get equal, if not better, experiences by doing so.
I don't know, because I missed out. I mean, when I graduated, I did not even know that there was an internship situation going on. So I'm like, okay, I graduated and I was applying for jobs, and I found a contract job in something that I really liked. So I was kind of like lucky, extremely lucky.
Right.
And it was the back end of when the financial crisis that we had globally in 2008, it was finishing off. So I'm like, okay, wow. I was applying for a lot of jobs, right? And I had my odd job aside, because throughout my my undergraduate degree, I was working full time, and I was studying full time. So basically, I was applying so much, and all of a sudden, I found this call. I will never forget. I think it was on a February day. It was snowing. I go to this agency, sat down. I did not even remember what it was the job for. And I sat down. This lady talks to me and say, "Okay, so what do you think about this contract?" And I say, "How many months?" And she said, 9 to 12. And I said, "All right, cool." And she said the pay. I don't remember now, but internally, my eyes went, "Whoa!" And I'm like, "What?"
But
And then
you're
she's,
playing it cool. You're like, yeah, okay,
oh yeah,
all
I
right. But
have a
inside, you're like,
very,
oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
yes, I have mastered a very, I think I did,
Poker face.
a poker face over the years that is very good, and I used it on many different circumstances. So when she says, "For what is it?" then I flip, and I'm like, and then internally I flip. I'm like, oh my god, and still today that job, it's like I have very. It was so much fun. Lots of fond memories. I had the chance to work in France. I had the
Cool.
chance to, to do so many cool things, and I had my team as well. That's a little bit of a rarity.
Yeah.
And people really were looking up to me. And I'm like, really? I mean, come on. And, you had your own little budget to do things day to day. It was just so much fun, but so much work as well. I missed out on internships. I literally never done one. That's why when I see somebody doing it and understand, I put myself in their shoes and I'm like, wow, this must be tough. So they better, you know, they better like um, kind of like take it easy on themselves. And when I see
Mm.
somebody like there is an intern is struggling, I always try to help out, to be honest, because they should have a good experience overall, learn something from it, whether it is like really relating yourself into a corporate environment or whether you want to do more or one thing rather than another. So that you could really, springboard your professional development.
Mm. Every time I look at like you as a cake,
Yeah.
it's so trippy. It's like something out of like a nightmare.
No, it's not a nightmare.
I
Come
feel,
on,
I feel
it's
like
cute.
I've taken
Oh,
drugs and just entered some new dimension.
it's trippy. So for the people that they cannot see it, so I'm a piece of cake sponge,
I'm a piece of cake.
but it's just a piece of cake. Like working with me is a piece of cake.
Ah, ba-doom.
Presumed like a pun was. And then I have, so it's vanilla sponge, and I have strawberry pink frosting. And I think that this frosting on the top is my kind of like side bang if it was my hair. And I have a very kind of like flippy
Yeah,
candle that is
yeah.
very cool. I like the candle a lot. So
I'm kind of excited to see which filters you're going to use each time because that's what I expect now. Every time
yes,
you have to do a different filter each time.
I have a selection. Yes,
Yeah.
and
How many do you have?
I have at the moment I have 6.
Okay.
Like I
Oh
was I
no.
was in two I was in
Well,
2 minds today because the other one that I had, it was even more trippy than this one because the
yeah.
background was moving when I was moving. So
Oh
that
wow.
would have been like really trippy. But this one, the background is static.
What,
So
what are you going to do when the six filters end? What
I
then?
think that gradually I have to kind of disclose, unfortunately, my facial features. And and
you
people will
could
say, wow, that's another filter.
you could wear like disguises. That'd be cool.
No, that's too
You could wear
much.
wigs. Oh, we
Oh,
could have
that's
some real fun with
interesting.
this. You could just like do different types of makeup and stuff and
Oh no, makeup. I'm not that great in makeup. I just do basic stuff. But yeah, I could. I don't know. I'm gonna develop some skills over time, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, I like this. I like seeing myself in a funny way. Like, look at this, swinging side to side.
So you have a qualification from the Chartered Institute of Marketing, CIM. This is a
Oh,
very well-known marketing qualification, and
yes.
I've always been quite intrigued by it. How important do you think this qualification is for the field of marketing?
For the field of marketing.
Or just, yeah, marketing in general. Like, is it really necessary? Do you have to have it for certain career paths, or is it just kind of like just helpful to have?
For me, that I studied sociology and film studies. That was my undergraduate degree. Um, for me, it has been useful, but
Hmm.
I think that in general, any certification is as much as useful as you make it to be.
Okay.
So I'm not a big believer that big names of universities, they guarantee that you know everything that you study, because
Oh, for sure.
ultimately it's up to you to make the best of what you learn. Um, so if, for example, somebody would think, hey, I want to look into this, I think that the reason why I looked into it is because I I held off from my master degree straight after my graduation because, as I said, I went straight to working. Then I
Mm.
got like caught up into the working cycle, like literally back to back, and I was doing short term contracts, and I enjoyed myself a lot. Um, then it came the point in which it was time to settle down and have a full time contract,
Mm.
and and then I was like, okay, but what about my studies? I wanted to just like close the loop, really. Then I actually, because I studied languages when I was a teenager, I took a detour, and I took well, I took the native level of French, and I studied for that for a moment, and that was good. So basically, my diploma in French is about It makes me laugh because it's something that I did it for my own interests, not necessarily for work,
Yeah.
but is social analysis and literature
Oh, wow.
understanding. So it's kind of like journalism to some extent as well. And then I realized that that diploma of French, they were like non-native people. They had to take it in order to finish their PhD. And I'm like,
Oh,
okay. And I'm like, right. But I say this bearing in mind that in my teenagehood and my childhood, I studied French 8 years prior
mm,
to, to take this diploma when I was in the 20s. So, I came to a point and say, okay, I already work in this environment. What else do I need? And I wanted to get something that was more like hands-on, but also strategic.
mm.
And that's why I looked at my options. I didn't really want to get into a full-time MA, and I want something that was more, manageable because, I always worked full-time.
Right.
So that's why I end up with the CIM. And to be honest, gives lots of nice tools. And for people that they want to kind of like have a solid foundation of tools and strategic thinking, that really helps. And it's also hands-on. So it's not like all theory. I could have done like financial analysis in other universities,
Mm.
which is something I also consider for a moment. But in that given moment of my career path, I said, no, I want something that is practical. It's something I can implement in my everyday, but that actually makes me evolve from what I already know. Because sometimes you work in different industries and you pick up also misconceptions. So I remember, for example, when I was in media agencies, they were calling certain type of research in a way, but then when I moved from a client side in research, that was not the right way of addressing that type of research, for example, and I'm
Mm.
being generic on purpose. So you need to know your stuff, and you need to know how your stuff push you to that limit, and then how much you want to stretch from it as well. I think,
Cool.
in my humble opinion.
No, thank you for sharing. I think that's going to be really useful to people, especially those considering like whether or not to do the qualification.
Yeah,
Um,
and now with the pandemic, I mean, I my ex-bosses, they were doing some interesting courses, digital,
mm,
and these courses I did in particular, I also attended classes, but it was in a manageable way, so it was not online.
okay.
But now that everybody's in lockdown, why not?
Oh yeah, 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 for sure.
Develop your skills, do it. I read a lots of sequels books over December. I did a lots of like courses on Udemy or Skillshare. Why not? And of course, those platforms, they don't give you like a certification that you can put on your CV, but they help you to get there. And yeah, that learning never stops.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, during that you mentioned that you studied sociology and film studies. So like,
Yeah.
how come you didn't pursue a career in the film industry, or like, what led you to, statistics? Like that's the very different field.
So I have to say that my foundation degree, it was in film productions and TV productions. So I literally know how to write a script and do all the documentation to shoot on the set and all this kind of stuff. I
So,
was
so we
like
say,
really
so how many degrees do you have then?
no, that was an undergraduate, so I think it doesn't count, right? The undergraduate degree, sorry, the foundation degree, it comes before the undergraduate, and then you have the
Oh,
master
right.
after that.
Okay.
So it's yeah, I mean, um, I fell in love with sociology. So, and let me flesh that out a little bit more. Um, my major is sociology, and I had a choice to make whether it would be film studies or sociology. The reason that made me tilt to sociology is because, yes, then I studied um, social analysis,
Hmm.
social methods, how to interpret data and with statistics. And that is fascinating in itself. Whilst film theory, exactly what I was doing, it was very theoretical. And it was kind of like if I would have specialized in that, I would end up to be like a film critic.
Mm.
Now, from one side, the film critic requires writing, watching movies, and develop your critical thinking. The same is also applied to data. But it happened something during those 3 years that it really made me tilt towards like understanding the data and understanding the general trends globally and how they impacted the society. So my dissertation was about, it was very depressing. It was extremely depressing because it was something down the line on the socioeconomical impact of the recession, um, on psychological behaviors, something like that, like
Mm.
something very heavy. And I remember even my prof was like, "Are you sure you want to talk about this? Because that's heavy stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, I like this. I like I took that interest." And then I end up like using the combination of both in all my jobs. So when I was in media global agencies, it really helped me to have that eye for understanding the content and how to kind of like see some elements that were more important than others, so that analytical and critical thinking came to fruition. And also those are the fundamental of strategic thinking as well. um, and I've been in a lot of marketing strategy teams and leading projects in that way, because once you segment the market opportunities and once you segment um, the consumer themselves, it's like that you are um, drawing a profile of what the company could go after, and that leads into the vision that that product or that company could go and put in practice. So to your question, why I didn't pursue a career in film, after studying sociology, I didn't want to be a film director anymore, but I wanted to combine the what it was happening in advertisement
Mm.
at the time, content wise and video content, and also what kind of like measures were behind it.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Oh, can I swear?
Sorry, where?
Can I swear?
Can you
Um,
swear? Oh, yeah, we're not
that's
sponsored yet, so if you want,
a big lesson in what, in working or in general?
it's just in life or
Fuck
whatever,
them.
you know.
That's my biggest lesson. Fuck them.
Okay. Who?
Everything and everybody. Sometimes you just have to, wake up on a day and open the window, look at the sky, whether it's sunshine or not, and just, say, fuck them. And then just do what you think is best for you. That's
Okay,
it.
right. So to decipher this a little bit, basically what you're saying is like, don't let other people kind of influence your decisions. Just do what's right for you. Is that kind of what you mean?
No, it's literally fuck them. No, I'm joking. It's yeah, it's like look inside
Okay,
yourself
yeah,
when you want some answers. Yeah, the influence of other people sometimes can impact you or not. It depends of the moment of your life, right? But sometimes you just have to go with your gut feeling. So you already have the answers within you. There's no need to ask outside, and just like shut off sometimes and just listen to yourself.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. I I found increasingly in my 20s, I've found that more and more, it's very important to listen to yourself, because people will try to influence you, but that's their perception of life. That's what's right maybe for them, but it's not right for you. That's the important thing. That's not to say you should. It's not to say you shouldn't accept advice from other people, but I think you have to look at like where it's coming from and what's the intention. Because a lot of the time people are trying to influence you rather than give you genuine advice that would be right for you. So it's very important to keep that in mind. But anyway, we're drawing to a close for today. I want to say massive thank you, Raffy, for joining us, for giving us this opportunity to introduce you to the audience. I know you weren't particularly keen on it when we were talking.
When we survived.
Yeah, I mean, because I know you had sort of, how can I put this? Let's say apprehensions about doing this, but I really wanted to do this. I think it's important that, we've gained a bit more of an understanding about you and your background and stuff. And, I'm really looking forward to doing these podcast discussions with you moving forward. Yeah. And just want to say a massive thank you for agreeing to do this. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris. I'm also very shocked that I survived 2 hours. And I'm looking forward to talk about different topics and crack some jokes, some bad jokes, because that's the only jokes I can do.
Yeah.
And it's all good. Thank you for having me, Chris.
Excellent. We'll be doing an episode very soon. We just need to work out our topic. But hey, guys, if you want to select a topic for us to talk about, please join the Discord server or contact me online. My DMs are open. You can tell me exactly what you'd like to see on the podcast moving forward, or potentially there might be a guest that you might want in the future as well. Let me know about that. Let me know what you would like to see or hear. Let me know, your thoughts on the podcast, good or bad. We always listen. We're always interested. We're very interactive in that Discord community, and it's growing. So you want to be a part of it. Trust me. But yeah, massive thank you to everyone that's, recently subscribed to the channels, that's been listening. I have been seeing those numbers slowly increasing. So I want to just say a massive thank you to everyone that is listening to the podcast, wherever you listen to it, if it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to it, a massive thank you. I've really been enjoying doing this podcast. And I know I don't often say this on the podcast, but I just want to say, again, a massive thank you, because I did not expect us to even get past 10 episodes. And here we are. It's the 76th episode now. And, we're moving in a different direction. It's moving finally where I want it to go. It's extending beyond interviews and going more into discussion-based stuff as well. And I want to reiterate as well that it's just going to be split. So you're still going to get your interviews, as always. That's always going to be a fixture on this podcast. But we want to introduce these discussion-based episodes as well, so that we can, all transparency, we want to grow as a podcast. And I think logically, that's a good way to do it. It's a good way to attract attention and more viewers by talking about topics that are interesting to you guys, that, and hey, I want to do this as well. I know, obviously, I want to do this. That sounds like a silly thing to say, but what I mean by that is that, I learned so much from these interviews anyway, from people, and I love doing it each and every time. But with these discussion-based episodes, I'm actually very excited about the prospect of just delving into episodes and, doing my research and finding out about these different topics. I'm excited to see where this will go. But just a massive thank you to you guys for listening. And to the next however many episodes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Until next time, guys, peace out, one love. I'll see you in the next one.